Thanks very much, Steve. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Stephen, for inviting me to come and speak here this morning to the Advertising Association to lead 2018. I was watching those figures. I'm not actually sure you put the 35% trust figure up there for your industry, but if it's any consolation, I don't even know what the rating will be for MPs, but you can be sure that it'd be a hell of a lot lower than 35%. Now, as you heard from the film, certainly an area of agreement between me and Liam Fox is that this industry continues to be world-leading, a hub for creativity and innovation. And this setting, actually, is not lost on me because C.P. Scott, who was one of the founding editors of The Guardian upstairs and one of the sponsors, once said, comment is free, but facts are sacred. Now, during the EU referendum, it's fair to say that what we were doing was debating hypotheticals. It was a hypothetical debate about what would happen if we voted to leave the European Union. Now the negotiations are underway, we actually now are dealing with facts, more and more new facts, I would argue. And yes, as Stephen said, David Cameron was filmed, did a clip in the last 24 hours saying, look, you know, Brexit hasn't turned out to be the disaster that we thought it would be. Well, we haven't actually left yet. And I think Martin Sorrell, who's the CEO of WPP, another one of your sponsors, was speaking for your sector when he said, the biggest issue facing British business is uncertainty, and Brexit has already damaged the UK's global brand. In fact, yesterday, the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility's head, Robert Choate, said that Brexit has harmed more than helped the economy, and the cost of leaving the single market and the customs union, I'll come on to that, outweigh any benefit. These are the elephants in the room. We can't hide from them. We can't ignore them. And I'm going to put my cards on the table, as Stephen alluded to. As some of you, I think, probably know already, I'm what Nigel Farage likes to refer to as a Remainian. I've been called a Ramona, and you know what? I'm damn proud to be called all of those things. I was a leading spokesperson for Britain Stronger in Europe during the referendum campaign. As was said, I chair Vote Leave Watch. I'm one of the main spokespeople for Open Britain, which is campaigning for a close relationship with Europe. So I think you can tell where I'm coming from. I have to say, I was a bit surprised when I was asked to replace Liam Fox as the keynote speaker this morning. That tribune of the people, the champion of the left behind, has dumped the Advertising Association this morning to speak at a lavish banquet at Davos this evening. You see, we Remainers, we're dependable. You know, we turn up to things. Now, I've got three important messages for you all today. The first is, it is becoming increasingly clear that Brexit, in the terms that it was sold to the British people, is not deliverable. It's not just an issue of government competence, it is not deliverable. Secondly, Conservative ministers are deliberately deceiving you. They are deceiving the British people about the Brexit negotiations. They are not being honest with you. So the third message really is, I'm here with a call to action to you, business, British industry, this advertising industry, to make your voices heard in this Brexit process. Speak up for your sector, speak up for your employees, speak up for your clients, and spell out to the government what you need in order to achieve growth beyond Brexit. Now, I'm proud that Lambeth, which is where my constituency is, scored the highest Remain vote in the country. In fact, my constituency scored the highest Remain vote in the country. Almost 80% of Streatham residents voted to remain in the EU. Granted, nationally, many others took a different view, and we know the referendum revealed deep divisions in our country, between nations, between generations, between socioeconomic classes, between different ethnic groups. But though a majority who voted to leave, the referendum didn't actually stipulate how and what leave would look like. And that's really important to understand. Now, last week I was at the European Commission and the European Council in Brussels, Myself and the other officers of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on EU Relations, we've been meeting ambassadors from pretty much all of the 27 other member states of the European Union, and I've had some quite intense discussions with senior British civil servants on this. I've got no problem with Liam, the government, wanting to be ambitious and to get the best deal for Britain. We all share that goal. However, I do take issue with ministers deliberately deceiving people and sowing the seeds of fantasy when, as the reality of Brexit becomes clear, it is open to people to take a different view on whether to actually press on with Brexit at the end of these talks. Here lies the first great deception I'm talking about. Government ministers portray Brexit as a single linear road with one destination where we cannot slow down, stop, or turn off. That is simply not true. Last week, the President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, in fact, the President of the Commission too, Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of France, they all made clear that the British people are the ones who are in charge of this process, and there is no legal or political obstacle to Britain's choosing to stay in the European Union if we don't like the Brexit deal Theresa May comes back with. The second great deception is to deny that the unsustainable negotiating red lines set out by the Prime Minister are severely restricting the ability of Britain to get a decent deal from this process. Our EU counterparts have put a number of options on the table. It is the Prime Minister who is ruling them out. For example, the single market provides tariff-free trade between countries and a common framework of rules, including employment rights, competition policy, consumer and environmental protections. EU countries come together through the customs union and apply the same tariffs to goods from outside the union. That is one of the reasons for you as an industry, as Stephen has said, being part of the European Union has been such a success. Now, non-EU countries can participate in both these bodies, and doing so is the best way of retaining the economic benefits of EU membership whilst being outside of the European Union. You don't have to be in the European Union to be a member of the single market and the customs union. It does frustrate me, I have to keep repeating that, even in my own party. But there you go. Now, Theresa May, she took these options off the table before negotiations even began, in order to appease the hard right in the Tory party and their dogmatic ideological political interests. This leads me on to the third great deception, that we can have the exact same economic benefits that we currently have in the EU if we are outside of the EU and its economic structures. Italy's Secretary of State for EU Affairs, Sandro Gozzi, was on my LBC radio show on Saturday, and he was clear we are not going to be able to enjoy the economic benefits that we currently enjoy if we are outside of the single market and the customs union after Brexit, if Brexit happens. Yet ministers keep on telling you all otherwise. Now, you could view this as, a negotiating tactic on behalf of the other EU 27. Of course they're going to say these things to us. Of course they're going to drive a hard bargain. But the reality is, if they give us special arrangements, other third countries with whom they have existing agreements are going to demand the same too. Norway has already warned that giving in to UK demands for a special trade deal, which, where we could cherry pick the UK sectors that participate in the single market, would force Norway to rip up its own agreement with the European Union and make similar demands. So let me be clear, the EU are not going to risk tearing apart the single market to give the UK a special deal, generally or in any particular sector, whether it's advertising, financial services, or anything else. Now, the government is labouring under the misapprehension that we will be able to secure a free trade agreement outside of the single market that not only covers goods, like the FTA deal that the EU has with Canada, but also services too. This is what David Davis calls Canada plus, plus, plus. It's funny how you need a dictionary now for all this kind of Brexit vocabulary. But again, President Macron, Sandro Gozzi, absolutely clear. You are only going to be able to have this if you remain in the single market. The simple message coming from our EU counterparts in conversations that I've had with them is that the UK cannot have its cake and eat it, contrary to what the government tells British business every day. So the reality is that while the European Commission is looking to strengthen, for example, the single market into digital and online services, something that would significantly benefit you, the advertising industry, we, Britain, is going to be left on the sidelines as things currently stand. And where are the public on all of this? Well, a recent poll by BMG showed that while 60% of those surveyed wanted to stay in the single market after Brexit, just 16% thought we should leave it. 57% want to stay in the customs union, while 16% disagreed. I just do not understand why the government doesn't listen. The last great deception is that the EU is preventing us from getting a bespoke agreement. They want to punish us. They want to make an example of us so nobody else leaves. Now, there is a general acceptance that any agreement for a particular country is going to be bespoke because, of course, it's going to talk to that particular country and its needs. President Macron said this on Sunday. However, even though Theresa May and her ministers keep talking about the desire for a deep and special partnership and that bespoke UK deal, the government has failed to set out for the European Union what it looked like. The Cabinet only started to discuss what the government's desired end state would be after we'd moved on from the first phase of negotiations just before the Christmas recess. And the thing is here, the reason they don't know what Brexit looks like or what a bespoke UK deal would look like is because the Cabinet cannot agree on it. Liam Fox is here, Philip Hammond is there, God only knows where Boris Johnson is. And there's also an inescapable practical issue because Theresa May prematurely triggered Article 50 without working out so many of these details. And now there is simply not enough time to put in place that bespoke agreement, even if we could get all these special favours we think the EU would give us, but clearly they cannot. So all of this is actually an obstacle of Theresa May's creation. It isn't the EU's. And look, I'm not saying the EU is perfect, but let's get real. She has put herself and her government, and our country, therefore, into a straitjacket. So I'm just going to finish by going back to where I started. It seems clear to me, following all these conversations that we've been having with our EU counterparts, that Brexit, in the terms it was sold to the British people, is impossible to deliver. You've had these second-hand car salesmen, Michael Gove and Boris Johnson, who have sold you what you thought was going to be a nice, slick, shiny Audi with not much mileage on the clock, all the added extras, maybe some alloy wheels, and you thought it was going to get you, in a fairly bling-bling nice fashion from A to B really easily. And now you're sitting in the car, and actually, it's an old banger. And it's got so many miles on the clock, and this thing is going to break down. And these people, their worry is that you're now going to want to abort your car purchase. And that's what this is all about. And I understand I'm being intensely political now. It's hard for me not to be on this issue, which is going to fundamentally affect future generations of this country for decades to come. And I understand that you as business, you're nervous about getting involved in these political debates. You'll never hear Stephen saying what I just said because, we have an avalanche of the nonsense that we have to put up with. But the thing is, the political is the commercial in this case. It is absolutely, indeniably linked to your company's futures. It is unavoidable. So this is an industry that is renowned throughout the world, as we've all said, and as I said, I agree with Liam on that, for its excellence, for its creativity. And despite the global reputation of London's advertising industry, I think a lot of people forget that most of the people working in your industry aren't based in London. More than half are working in the regions and cities outside of London. So be confident, speak up for this industry, speak up for your sector, your employees, your clients, spell out to government and to Parliament what you need us to do for you in order to achieve growth, whatever happens with this Brexit thing in the future. This industry, the British advertising industry, you are simply too important not to be a loud voice in this debate. So please, 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 speak up and tell us what you need from this Brexit process. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Yes, Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chuka. That was a fantastic speech. As you rightly say, we can't be quite as political as that in terms of the stance that we take, but we are campaigning very loudly on issues around talent and keeping the best possible access on to the EU. It's been fundamentally important to our success, and it will be in the future. Thinking about your own party's position, do you think, which in a way has been a political masterpiece, you might argue, in terms of opacity, possibly, and it's hard to discern at times where the position is. Do you think the party...
You might think so, I can possibly comment.
Do you think... Give us a sense of where the groundswell is moving. I mean, you're connected not just in your party, but across the whole political spectrum with the Remain sort of sympathisers. Where do you give us a sense of where the groundswell is moving towards the customs union and single market? And where do you think we're going to end up?
Well, I think in Parliament there is a majority for us to stay in the single market and the customs union. Of that, there is no doubt. Let's not forget, as I said, we know a majority of the people that participated in the referendum, which wasn't necessarily a majority of the population, voted to leave, but we don't know the form of leaving. We do know that the Prime Minister made leaving the customs union and the single market and the European Court of Justice and the other institutions the core of her general election campaign in June last year, and she lost her majority. Yeah. So she certainly doesn't have a mandate to take us out of those two institutions. And whether people voted leave or remain, I just don't think they voted to rob themselves of their jobs and to close down British businesses. So I believe there is a majority in the House of Commons on this. And look, I wish, and I've been urging that my party has a much clearer position on this. The time for constructive ambiguity, 2017, is over. We are going to have to pick a side on this and which options that we want. My guess is, from my conversations with the people running the European Union, is we're going to be faced with a choice. It will be either accept a really substandard deal, which can only be substandard because of the red lines of the Prime Minister, or you can stay in. That will be the choice. And, for the Labour Party, if we don't want to vote for a Tory Brexit, and I suspect maybe the Tory bit more than the Brexit thing is the problem, then, what else are you going to do? Now, some in my party think at that point, in October, we'll be able to say, look, we're not going to vote for this deal. Government should go back and negotiate more with the European Union. But the European Union at that point is going to be saying no more negotiation, because they want this all out of the way before the European elections in 2019. So that's the reality of what's going to happen. But Parliament is not going to be a bystander in this process, which is why there is a lot of cross-party work going on. Frankly, for people like me, this is beyond party. This is about the future of our country, and it's the same for people like Anna Soubry, Dominic Grieve in the Conservative Party, and the other parties. And, I think we've asserted ourselves in defeating the government who were trying to stop us from having a meaningful vote on these things before Christmas. And if they continue to behave like that, there will be more government defeats.
Yeah. Good, thank you very much. And I'm going to take a question from the screen there. So it's a question from the app. How likely do you think it is that there'll be a second referendum? And if there were, how do you think the country would vote? I'm going to guess the answer to the second part of that.
The thing is, you're so frightened about making predictions. And I remember 2015, I said to my wife, look, I think we're probably going to win the general election given the polls, and we lost. And then, do you think Hillary's going to, do you think Brexit's going to happen? I was like, well, I don't know. And I really didn't know. But I said, if you're forcing me, maybe we'll just avoid it. And then we Brexited. And then Hillary, how can Hillary get beaten by Donald Trump? And then, and now we have this, let me not even get myself into trouble by expressing a view on that terrible president of the United States. So I'd say I think there's a 25 to 30% chance that Brexit may not happen. I wouldn't put it any higher than that. I think it's odds on that it will happen. But I think the first thing is the public up until now have thought that this is inevitable and believe that once you're on the train, you can't get off it. Thanks to the interventions of people like Lord Kerr, you've got the people on Gogglebox discussing how actually legally we don't have to necessarily stay on the train. And I think with the European leaders last week, so-called love bombing the British public and saying, look, the door's still open to staying in, means that I do think that people are more open and inquisitive about whether or not we do have to do this, given, you know, I don't know about you, have you seen that £350 million per week extra going to the NHS yet? If you find it, please tell me where it is. But, you know, so I think people are more quizzical about it. And also, I think it was quite significant, Nigel Farage's intervention. And frankly, Michael Gove has suggested the same, and Jacob Rees-Mogg, although he doesn't want anyone to know about it, has said that, you know, have entertained this notion of it going back to the people. Because how can you thwart the will of the people if they get the final say? It's not like, you know, I'm standing behind a lever going, you will vote Remain this time, you know. So I think this is a lot more fluid, a lot more fluid. And if there were another referendum, it wouldn't be just a relitigation of the previous one, because frankly, a lot of the debate would be put to bed partly because we know what we're dealing with. Yep. It wouldn't be a hypothetical debate. You would know what Leave looks like in the deal, and you'd know what Remain looks like in the status quo. And there would be no debate about what those things entails, because we know the facts, and that would be the big difference. But I certainly don't think we should be closed to the people actually having the final say on this. I'm not sure leaving it to a Westminster elite or a Secretary of State in Davos to decide is necessarily the best thing.
Great. Chuka, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Pleasure.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Really good. Thank you.